What's up, everybody? Morning, noon. We're going to be continuing to work on our Twitch integrations here. Last night, I sort of refactored entirely how I'm handling authentication. And I realized I kind of borked the way I'm handling Spotify access tokens and whatnot. So right now, I'm just writing some schemas to fix that. Well, access token. We're going to have to rename all this, but let's just get this going. We want that. You actually want it to be optional. And the schema we're transforming to is going to be struct. Going to a access token field. I think what we can do here is export class. Refresh token. Stills. Children of extend. Spotify. All 3 for token. And we're going to just override the refresh token and make it optional. That'll work. Yeah. Alrighty. So this will be the type of the response we get back from Spotify. This is the final access token we want to construct. And access token from refresh token is going to be Spotify refresh token. And actually, I don't think we need this. Here, where we do the refresh token, the reason for this is because Spotify, if the refresh token is still, so what I thought, the section of the docs is kind of confusing. When you issue a request for a refresh token, if there's not a refresh token in the response you get back, you can just keep using the same one. But I thought it meant you can just keep using the full token. So I was never actually updating the access token, hence all these issues that I was getting in my app when it came time to refresh the token. So instead, what we want to do here is we want a schema body JSON. This is going to be a Spotify refresh token. And then we're going to insert drop flat math. 3 for token. Okay, so we got our refresh token here. And what we basically want to do is we want to check if the refresh token dot. So we're going to use predicate is undefined. Not sure if I'm going to get flat map here, but if the refresh token is undefined, the refreshed token does not have a refresh token, then we can just do new access token to single elevation. Let me just map here. And this is going to take in the token. Actually, what we can do is we can add a method from refresh. If the token has a refresh token, we need to update this token entirely. We need to do new access token. I don't like having this logic here. Let's just leave it here. So we are going to need to flat map because we need to do that current time really is that. We did that. No, why my brain is having such a hard time doing this right now. Predicate that is not undefined. Refreshed. Refresh. Token. Okay. So if the refresh token exists, then we need to create a whole new access token. So our parent new access token. Refreshed. Create it out. What am I missing here? Redacted string undefined is not definable to type redacted string. Okay, before we fix that, let me just see what the logic is here. So access token. So if we don't refresh. Keep this token and this token not refresh token. Cue to that. How can I put this logic into access token? Spotify refresh token. The reason I don't like this is because we're separating the creative app. Being a bit pedantic here. Let's just see if this even works. How about that? What we can do. Const refresh token equals predicate dot is not undefined refresh. Refresh token but refresh. So if we have a refresh token, then we use the response.refresh token. Otherwise, we use the token.refresh token. And now we can just return new access token. Response refresh token created that. Else. Oh, I just single validation. Do. Oops. We can get rid of this. And that should work. How's it going, Mattia? What are you up to today? And now we can start our machine and see if this works. usually, so one of the things we adjusted is that we immediately, when the service is initialized, one of the things we adjusted here, that we immediately create an initial token. I'll walk you guys through the logic here. Experimenting with Chrome debug protocol proxies, man, you're just like cooking like a mother. I love it. So let me walk you folks through what I've been working on. So in the basically the problem I wanted to solve is that with Spotify, we want to allow the user to go through the authorization code flow. So with most OAuth providers, you have several ways of authenticating. So, or authorizing, I guess, your app to do stuff. So with OAuth, there's multiple ways. The authorization code flow, there's now authorization code PKCE, which is more appropriate if you can't like securely store your secret. So things like running client side, where you only can expose the client ID. There's the client credentials grant, which is more for server to server auth. So this is like the flow that you would use if you're not doing things on behalf of a user. But like if you're doing things on behalf of a user, you would generally use like the authorization code. So I needed to do this because our goal is to have you folks be able to submit song requests through the stream. And then for us to be able to like take that song request, push it into my Spotify like song queue, do all the stuff on the Twitch side that needs to be done to redeem that reward or refund it if necessary. So the problem with this is that authorization code flows require the user to log in to authorize your app to access the resources that your app says it needs to access, right? So usually the flow looks like this, which is like really hard to see. Can I open this in a new tab? Here you go. So generally speaking, like your app requests to the user to access some data, send along all the information about the app, including the scopes that you want to access on behalf of that client. Spotify will redirect the user to log in and authorize your app to do this stuff. And then when the user does that, your app will receive from Spotify will receive like the authorization code from the user. And then you have to take this code, submit it to Spotify, and that's how you get access tokens, refresh tokens that allow you to access those scoped resources. So that's like the basic like authorization code, OAuth to whatever. Oh, Raid and Run. Peace, Dylan. I hope you guys have a good day today. Looking forward to seeing what Bersel's launching today. Hola, everybody. What's up? I am just explaining the stuff that we're working on for my little Twitch integration app here. So much like Dylan's channel, I'm trying to enable you all to be able to submit song requests to my Spotify queue. One of the problems I was facing is I didn't want to use the Spotify SDK. Hey, Owen Code, thank you very much for the follow. I really appreciate that, man. Thank you. One of the things I wanted to do was try to avoid using the Spotify SDK. MSMPS_. Thank you very much for the follow. So in order to do that, I had to figure out a way to manage the Spotify access tokens. So I was just explaining what's up, Minion? I was just explaining there are a couple of different ways when you're doing OAuth 2 that you can authenticate. You can tell the like service you're interacting with that your app can do stuff. If you have to take actions on behalf of a user, generally speaking, you would use the authorization code flow. Why not use the SDK? I don't know. I just wanted to see if I could not use it. It was more like I wanted to explore Effect's HTTP framework a little more. I've used it only like sparingly in the past for developing the AI libraries, so I just kind of wanted to try not using the SDK. Yeah, kind of like just wanted to see if I could do it, right? 'Cause one of the problems I needed to solve was I needed to do stuff on behalf of myself. And whenever you need to take actions on behalf of a user with auth 2, you have to go through the authorization code flow. Either this flow or the PKCE version. This is only really necessary if you can't securely store the client secret. So like if you're running on the front end and you're sending the user through the auth code flow, this is when you would use this. So I needed to use this, but this requires like a whole interaction with the user. You guys have definitely done this before when you're interacting with different apps where you'll log into the app will redirect you to a screen that'll say, hey, I need to access these resources in app X. And then you say, yeah, that's fine. You log in. Once you log in, the app itself, so in this case, my Twitch integrations, would get a code, an authorization code on behalf of the user. And then I have to send that code off to, in this case, Spotify, saying, hey, the user authenticated. This is the code I got saying that it's authenticated. And once I do that, I get an access token and a refresh token. So I'm only ever authenticating on behalf of myself. Could you zoom in a bit to code? Yes, I will. Sorry. Let me do that now. Let me know if that's good or if it needs to be a little bigger. Is this going to be OSS? Yes, it is. There's nothing sensitive or proprietary in here. This is really just an experiment. So I only ever need to authenticate on behalf of myself. So I just set up like a really dumb little script that I can run. And this script is off Spotify module here, which just spins up a HTTP server. So if I were to like run this Spotify script, it spins up a little HTTP server that has two endpoints, an authorized endpoint and a callback endpoint. So if I hit the authorized endpoint, it'll do this part of the flow. It'll request authorization data and I'll be prompted to log in. And then the callback receives the code once I log in, right? So that's what's happening here is basically when I authorize, I redirect to the Spotify authorization URL, this base URL here, which tells Spotify I'm authenticating on behalf of the user with this client ID. And then when it gets when the callback is hit in my app from Spotify, or once the user authenticates, I get the code. And really all I'm doing here is I'm logging out the auth code. This way I can grab that code and dump it into my fly.io app secrets. And then my app takes over from there. So if we go back into Spotify auth, where are we here? I've got this Spotify auth service, and basically what it attempts to do, a few different things. The first thing it will try to do is it'll take that auth code that I put in for my app, and it will attempt, well, the first thing it attempts to do is retrieve a cached like access token structure. And so this cached token on my server would the access token, the refresh token, the expiration date of any token I had gotten previously. But if I don't have any token yet, the first thing that happens here at the very bottom here, when I try to grab my initial token, I try to read the token from the cache. If that succeeds, I refresh the token if it's expired. If it fails, I have to fetch a new token. And this fetch token method is the thing that uses that auth code. So the first time I ever boot up my server, if there's no token cached already, it'll attempt to use that auth code that I dropped into my secrets to get an access token and a refresh token. And then from there, I can cache it into the file system, which is what I do here. I write the token to a cache file. And really all this does is it takes the token, turns it into JSON with effect schema, and writes it to the cache token path. And then I return that token, which is just an access token. And then from then on, every time this service calls get token here, it will check. Actually, I think there's one other thing I need to do here. Do I set? I think I need to read the token from the cache. Oh no. Yeah, so once I do all of that, I actually set up a synchronized ref. So in effect, yeah, it's not working 100% yet. So that's what we're working on currently. You'll see here, it's like there's still stuff that's failing. We'll fix it, don't worry. Sorry, Cat or Sushi, if you were trying to request the song that was failing. Still not 100% working. But anyways, once we fetch this initial token, whether it comes from the cache or whether we're fetching a new one, we set up a synchronized ref with it. And all a synchronized ref is a ref that wraps all of its operations with a semaphore. So this way there can only ever be one person interacting with this ref at a time, which in my case is useful if like one fiber is trying to update the token, like fetch a new token, and another fiber is trying to use a token. This will kind of help prevent some of those issues. So we got this token ref, and now we basically can say in our get token method, I mean, feel free to keep testing it. Like, we're going to be iterating on it while we're here, but so this synchronized ref will attempt to update the ref with the refresh token if it's expired method, which just takes the token, checks if it's expired, and if it is, it refreshes it. Otherwise, we just return it. And then we get that token. So basically, my auth services all function this way. If we're managing tokens, that we're doing it like kind of this way. I still have to do a little bit of tweaking to the Twitch auth client, but we'll do that once we figure out Spotify. All right, so let's actually see what the issue that you encountered here, Katrushi, was. Cat or Sushi. So we've got an invalid song URL. Interesting. Yeah, so this URL here isn't valid. When you want to request a song, you can do basically this. Go to Spotify, grab, I don't know, a song like, I like this one, and copy link to song. And then if we were to open up my stream, you go request a song, paste in the full link, and hopefully this works. And the song shows up in my queue. And that's kind of the idea. I don't know if that's 100% how Dylan's works, but I figured it was just easier to copy the full link to the song. So Cat or Sushi, if there's a song you did want to request, make sure you copy in the full song URL from Spotify. So anyways, that's basically how we're handling things. And we only ever have to do that auth code manual step in theory once, because then after that, we can just keep using our refresh token to issue new access tokens. And one of the things we were working on right before the stream started is fixing up this method here, which is the method that we use to get a refresh token. So to get a refresh token with Spotify, we just do a post to the API token endpoint. with some URL params. Excuse me. We want the grant type to be a refresh token. We want to use the refresh token coming from the token we already have, right? Because that's how all refresh tokens work. You use the refresh token on the token you have to get a whole new access token, refresh token pair. But with Spotify, the refresh token contained in the response that you get back may or may not be there. So when a refresh token is not returned, you continue to use the existing token. So basically, like the logic we have here is if we don't have a refresh token in the response, if we do have a refresh token in the response, we use that as the new refresh token. Otherwise, we use the previous one. But you folks should be able to request songs now. You just need to make sure you use Spotify, the Spotify URL. And there's actually some pretty cool schema stuff going on here. This is the shape of the access token returned by Spotify. So a token type, a token type code with Josh. Thank you very much for the follow. I really appreciate that. Awesome. I don't have command setup ratios. I'm sorry. If there are commands you folks would like to see in the chat, please let me know. I can set them up. I should probably set up a today commands that you folks can see what I'm doing. That's my bad. I'm still like relatively new to the Twitch streaming stuff. What project am I working on? Yeah, basically this is a Twitch integration. I'm trying to like do a little more streaming so that we can show people how we can develop stuff with Effect. And to that end, I wanted to make my stream a little bit more inviting. So I wanted to set up the music queue system that Dylan has on his stream. Explain Effect API, yeah. Soon. I wanted to set up Twitch integrations. So this project is basically Twitch integrations that I'm setting up for my stream, written from scratch with Effect. And I'm trying to like minimize my use of SDKs to push Effect as far as I can. Yeah. So right now we're working on the song queue system for our stream. So if there are songs that you want to request, you can go to Spotify. We go here. I really like the Arcane soundtrack. So maybe we can do whatever song you want. Go to share, go to copy link to song. Down here in your chat, you'll see a little reward thing, and one of them is song request. Click that and paste in the link. It'll add it to my Spotify queue here. So that's what we are working on right now, is just kind of like getting all the pieces working. This way you folks can request the music that you want. Let me reopen Spotify so that the music starts up again. Look for an echo. So yeah, that is what we were working on today. I was just talking before about how I was handling OAuth stuff with Spotify through the app. But anyways, there's some cool schema stuff going on in here. This is the schema that represents what we get back from Spotify when we request an access token. So there's a token type field. I wanted to rename it to camel case from snake case. So I just add all these like from key things. This property signature thing is required to convert a schema into a property signature so that we can then use from key. If I didn't have this, I wouldn't be able to use from key. So basically I do that for all the properties that are snake cased. I also use schema.split to turn the scope, which is when we get it back from Spotify, it's like a space delimited string into an array of strings. So you can see it actually in the encoded type of the schema. Spotify type of Spotify access token dot encoded. And if we look at the type side as well, so you can sort of see it. This is the type that we get back from Spotify, this structure here. And then when I decode it with my schema, it decodes to an instance of Spotify access token. It decodes to like an actual instance of this class with these properties. Then we've also got a structure that represents the Spotify refresh token, which is basically the same as the access token, except for that the refresh token is optional in this case. And then my Spotify access token class as the Spotify access token, except I also created that field because the expires in property is literally how many seconds that token has until it expires. So in order to compute the actual expiration, which we should probably just like add here as a getter, get expiration or expires at, well, anyways, to calculate the expiration date, need to multiply expires in by 1,000 to get it in millis and then add it to the created at, so that we actually get the span of time until it's expired. And then the last schema I have in here is one that transforms from the Spotify access token structure to the type side of the access token. So every schema's got like an encoded side and the decoded side, or the type side. And this, I forgot about schema not renamed. Rename. Does it work like this? I can like just use it on the full object. Oh yeah, you could do that. In this case, because I'm using a class, I can't pipe the struct into it. In Schema 4.0, classes can accept whatever schema you want, which is great. I can't wait to be able to use Schema 4.0. It is actually the most wild thing ever. Like Julio actually crushed it with 4.0. But here we're limited because since we're using schema.class, I'm just stuck with the fields. So this is what we're stuck with at the moment. So yeah, that's the Spotify side of things. So Yash, what's up? Also, all the juicy derivations, yeah, for sure, Mattia. The derivations are going to be wild. I actually can't wait. The other cool thing that I think was fun was I'm actually generating a fully spec'd out HTTP client for the Spotify API with Tim's open API generator, which reminds me I need to update all my packages. So if we actually look at it under my domain folder, this Spotify file is fully generated with Tim's open API generator. And I was actually working with Tim last night to make a couple of PRs to the open API generator because Spotify's open API schema, we had a couple of things that we weren't supporting. But this whole file is fully generated, and then at the end, we get an interface that describes like every operation we can perform. And we also get cause to make a constructor that allows us to create the Spotify API operations that we can perform. So we get like a fully derived HTTP client. So what does that look like in practice? Well, in my Spotify client service here, I'm importing this generated file as API, and I'm literally I set up like a base API, base HTTP client that I want to use that does some things like, adding the access token into the request here as a bearer token. Making sure it always returns okay, etc. Mapping the request to add some stuff. And then I can just return API.make. And this is pretty cool because then in other services, so for example, my song request service, I can just yield my Spotify client. And I have all the methods on here, and they return. Because the generated file also creates schemas, it returns fully validated responses. So if I want to get a track, right here where I get a track, you'll see that what I return is actually a fully generated track object, which is like a typeset schema for that thing. So if I go track, I have all of the properties on here. So this song request service is doing some stuff. It's first of all, on our Twitch client, we have this method that we created that allows us to listen for events on the Twitch events sub API. And if we get this type of event with these conditions, we add the song to the queue. So that event gets fired when you folks request a song. Agree. Looking forward to. Do you folks have an ET and the publishing of Effectful to NPM been as an alpha without having to compile it before using it? No. We are currently focused on stabilizing to a better degree. I know. I'm sorry. We're focused on stabilizing cluster and workflow a little more. And then we're going to go full in on Effect 4.0 and try to get that out the door. But if you want to use it, there's a way. Or if you want to experiment with it, there's a way. Let's open a new tab. And let's go to Effect Small. If you go to, I know this isn't ideal, but if you go to the GitHub Actions and you go to the snapshot workflow, I literally, I know there's been a lot of stuff on on Twitter about GitHub's UI, but I just hate the fact that it's so hard to find stuff. If you go into our actions for Effect Small and you go to snapshot, and you just click the latest one, in here under create snapshot, we have these snapshot packages. They're not published to NPM technically. They're published using a package PR new. But you can put this URL in your package JSON and it should work. Sometimes we've had issues with workspace dependencies and whatnot. But you should be able to at least experiment with Effect Small if you want to via this method. So yeah, so when we add a song to the queue, we first try to use schema to decode a song request from you folks. So the prompt that comes in, the user input, we decode it into hopefully a valid song URL. Have this schema. And then we use that track ID that we've parsed out. We pass that to the get track API for Spotify to get the actual track. And we add the track to the queue. If we were successful in all of that, you guys will get a message in my Twitch chat saying that you requested X track by some artists. And then it'll redeem that reward. Otherwise, if that fails for some reason, we do a bunch of logic here to try to see if we can refund that reward. So yeah, it's pretty cool. There's one thing I want to try to pick though in the Twitch. So let's get rid of this. We don't need these logs right now. Let's open up Spotify off. So there's one thing I want to fix in here, which is somewhere in here. So with Twitch, I don't know if this is necessarily like recommended or whatnot, but I couldn't figure out in the time that I wanted to spend working on this, I couldn't figure out a better way to do it. No problem, Federico. Yeah, hopefully in the next month or two, we'll be able to start a push on 4.0. I wouldn't expect any, like, we're not giving out timelines, basically. With Twitch, we have to manage an app token and a user token. So like an authorization code token and an app token. There's a way to do this with one token. I just couldn't figure it out and also couldn't be bothered to figure it out. So I'm managing 2 tokens right now. But what I wanted to do was so somewhere. Yeah, here we go. Refresh token expired. And we want Davide. Welcome. Thank you for the follow. Steve, thank you very much for the follow. Appreciate that. Which the refresh token have expired. Okay, so what do I want to do in here? I want to have the same behavior that I have over here, where I take in some token. Well, token stems access token. And one pull. I think this will work. So we basically need to switch on the token type. We do this logic. So if it's an app token, we don't need to do anything with the refresh token. If it's a user token, we do need the refresh token. So now we should be able to do of them good because we're only doing that logic once. But what I want to do is I have it here. So effect.blind map, refresh, token of expired. So maybe we can just do this. It's not the deal, but and then here we do as any. Is this great? Yes. Cool. Alrighty. So this should allow us to make sure that the initial token that we get is refreshed when the service starts, as opposed to refreshing on the first get. Which I think is better. All right. So let's deploy that. I'm surprised that nobody has tested out my song request feature aside from the one failure that we had. It costs you 1 channel point, which I think is virtually nothing. It's literally the smallest I could make the value. Make sure everything looks good here. Cool. All right. I think we're in good shape. So we also have a little HTTP API we expose here through this service, mostly to support Twitch at the moment, because I'm using, instead of using a WebSocket so Twitch's event sub API is like how you can listen for notifications about different events that happen on Twitch. So that's how I'm listening for when somebody requests a song. And you can listen a couple of different ways, but they recommend either using webhooks or WebSockets. And I decided to use webhooks just for fun. And to do that, we needed to implement webhook signature verification. So what I decided to do was using Effect's HTTP API builder. One crab rave from Dylan's Raiders. So what I'm doing here is I'm using HTTP API builder. I set up an endpoint, which is under V1 Twitch events, which is basically my webhook event endpoint. And essentially what happens is this endpoint will get all of Twitch's webhook requests. And we add a webhook verification middleware, which you can see running here. It always when it starts up, it does the initial subscription through the webhook. And we have to basically verify that the signature we're getting is what we expect. And we can actually look at the implementation if you guys are curious. This is the implementation for the HTTP API. This right here is the webhook signature verification middleware layer. where we grab the webhook secret from a redacted config. We've got this function which calculates an HMAC, SHA-256 HMAC for us. This one which verifies the message. And then we have this function which is returned by the middleware. Which grabs the headers from the request. And we actually verify that the headers are what we expect them to be using this schema headers method, which allows us to like pass in a schema. And when we yield this method, it'll check the request headers against that schema. And if it matches, it'll return like the expected shape. We also grab the body of the request in the middleware. And we grab the headers we need. We assemble the message the way we're supposed to, calculate the HMAC, and then we verify the signature against the signature that we received from Twitch. And as long as everything's verified, we allow things to continue. Here, these are not verified, we return the signature verification error. And the HTTP layer is pretty simple. This event endpoint just extracts the message type and responds appropriately. I think the only interesting piece is here where like the HTTP layer, when it gets a notification, will send a notification via the notify method on the Twitch client. And this notify method, all it does is it takes that message and pushes it into a pub sub that this service has in it. So this pub sub is sitting here and notify just pushes into it. And then I can do stuff with the pub sub. For example, this subscribe to event method, this listen for event method allows me to subscribe to particular events. Then unwrap a stream from this pub sub. So basically like I issue an HTTP request up here in subscribe to event to tell Twitch I'm subscribing to a particular event, in this case, the song reward one. I do it in the acquire release because we also need to delete the subscription when we're done. We can get rid of this. And then once the subscription is set up, I just create a stream from a pub sub, which basically just takes the subscription out of the pub sub and turns it into a stream. So I'm actually using this method in my song request service. Listen for event. We looked at this already, but in my listen for event thingy. So I'm listening for this particular subscription event with these conditions being my broadcast ID and the song request reward ID that I set up. And I just do this in a background fiber. So the service is always listening. And when it gets a new song, it tries to add it to the Spotify queue. And that is how that works. Why don't we go ahead and make this open source now so that you folks can look at it if you want to. Git status. Let's make sure. Actually, let's just use the Vim API for this. I don't really want to change depths. What's in the Docker line? In there. Modules, disk. Oh, so I put it in there. We probably also don't want Docker in. What does this do? I forked this off of Tim's MCP repo. So we don't need any workflows, I don't think, for now. Yeah. I think we're going to just not have workflows for the moment. then done NVRC. Even is prettier. So we can add the Docker ignore, we can add the NVRC, we can add the git ignore, we can add the Docker file. Did I fix the Docker file? I think I did. Yes. The license. Hit me. Go in here. Yeah, this is fine for now. Plan, fleet, flight.toml, package JSON, PM stuff. First, tsconfig, TSO. The Dylan's Batman. So we should have nothing to commit, and now we can create a repo for this. Somebody test out my goddamn song request. Create a new repository. Oh. Twit integrations. All right. Custom twit integrations built with the cloud. Oh. Oh. All right. Mattia, let's see how you broke it. Rico's work. Craftsfault. It's weird. I'm getting no log. I'll probably adjust for that. You know what? Let's adjust for that. Let's change the way we're doing this. Let's change the way we're doing this. Yep. Regex, here we go. Con song URL regex. It's going to be gotta start with this. We can have. I don't want greedy matching. You know what? Let's see how well GPT does it with this. Copy link. And hitting JavaScript registers that will abstract. We need file ID on this URL. The and good and solution code the URL of no the query parameters also optional. Let's see how well this thing does. The results should be all right. Yeah, I'm going to ignore everything until track, probably, and then ignore the query parameters as well. But I just want to see. I want to see how well. Sure, we could just do this. We could just do. Uh, uh, we want to match. Here's the. Here's the. We've got to be a better way to do alpha nums and regex, but I'm not remembering. We want one or more. And then I'm not exactly sure what it's doing here, but let's just go with it for a moment. Now we can take this. Ooh, trusty old regex 101. Anybody use this or have a better one? That would probably work, Steven. I kind of want to see if I can just go even more generic, though. But let's do yours version. Let JavaScript. And where's Matthias' stinky URL? Copy link. So this matches, but it doesn't extract the track, which I want. So let's do this. This supports Spotify track ID too. Jesus, goodness. Uh, I'm willing to try this. This does not look like it works. I'm gonna just go with this. Okay. Current get song identifier equals. Actually, can this still be an effect? I think it can. It's instead of doing this, let's do const2let equals song 0.let. Is this the one that I want? Let. Wow, does TypeScript actually like infer this now? Let's test it. Node. Add you on Discord. Mine is working. I can't like not pasted properly. This version here just I think will work. We can what's it called? Bike shed the regex in a moment. Is it what? We'll test this. Where's the bad URL? That's one, right? Yeah. I mean, this work for now. So let's do this draft. We can continue to bike shed the regex as necessary. If sporadic hit is on not okay. One. Then we return the the cause in this case is going to be um, actually we can just remove the cause from the stem. JLG Dev, thank you very much for the follow. Appreciate that very much. URL, song, URL. Effect. Something tells me this is not going to unify. No. You know what we're going to do? We're going to do. Look at Mattia's beautiful LSP. Look at this. Look at this. Unbelievable. Beautiful. What are we cooking? We are building Twitch integrations for my stream. We're working on the song request feature. So if you want to, you can test it out by at the bottom of your chat. If you click to redeem a song request reward, it's like it's as cheap as I can make it. It's 1 channel point. You can submit a Spotify link, and it will add the song to my Spotify queue. All right, Mattia, you make a beautiful LSP. Let me just tell you. What? There we go. Feel free all to bike shed the regex as you all see fit. We no longer need the Temple module. Excuse me. And we no longer need this, which means we no longer need schema. Git add cut git submit onion group song. Improve parsing of the song. Spotify. Look at Mattia's ad payment. We were just talking about how beautiful your LSP is. The Effect LSP is goated. Facts. Okay, so for those who are interested in looking at this thing, MX Twitch integrations. For those who are interested, there's the repo. So, like, further goals here, I want to have a similar little widget that Dylan has on his stream so that you folks can see, like, what's currently playing and what's up next. I would like to have a command in the chat that allows you all to see the current song. I don't know if you can. I have to look into this, but it would also be cool if there was like a song command in the chat. This way you didn't have to like do all the clicking. That also allows you to redeem the reward, but I don't know if that's possible. I've never done Twitch commands before. But one piece of data that the server does need to expose, which we were working on and then we got sidetracked, is the Spotify client's queue. The current queue. So we can get the player queue this way. And we can see. we need to construct a song queue of what's currently playing and what's left in the queue, and that'll be exposed to the widget somehow whenever we build said widget. It will also this data will also be used for any commands that we add to our chat. So like if we want to do like a exclamation point or exclamation point song queue or something like that, or forget what Dylan's command is called. I think he has a nice setup. Look. Source. Toy. API. Here. Currently playing request. Yes, that is what we want. Currently playing request. We're just going to see where he's pushing us into his queue. Here, chat message. Oh, I see. Exclamation point song. Through he's the exclamation point song for the currently playing song. I think we have a next nice feature that we could add. Would be actually in the song request client. We could look into how to Twitch API. We can look into how to create a command or to listen for commands or something like that. I think we still need event sub. We want to look at subscription types. I think we want this one, channel chat message. Authorization requires the user read chat scope from the chatting user. I think we have that. So let's so we're gonna yield Twitch client on listen for event. They're gonna need to make this event. And then we'll type to stream dot. We can actually change this to run for each. Delete this. For each. Interruptible. We make sure, I like to make sure all my fibers are interruptible by default unless I don't want them to be interruptible. So I prefer to be like a little bit pedantic. And we are going to listen to what was the event? Channel chat message. Now, I don't think the Twitch API has an open API schema, so I couldn't generate like the schemas for this. So we're going to need to go to the main Twitch. And here, export paths null chat message event. All right, I'm going to ignore chat for a second. Sounds interesting. How long have you been using Effect? I'm considering it lately. JLG Dev. one of the core contributors to Effect. So I've been with the team for the better part of 6 years, I think. I've been through a couple of rewrites of the library with Mike. Uh, I think since I started it, since Mike and I became friends, I think we've rewritten Effect together twice. And this most recent time, Tim actually shouldered most of that burden. All right, let's see what we get back here. So lean fill. So this is what we have to send. So we'll take this and put it over here for now. So this is what we get back. Specifically this stuff. Now, I don't think we need all of this information. And I really wish quit open API schema. Sucks. I really wish there was an open API spec. I just don't know how official these other unofficial open API specs are. Do what the fuck you want to public license. All right, let's need all of this information. We can extract the pieces that we want. I think the text of the message here, I think, is the interesting piece, right? What is this? The chat message in plain text. Yeah, I think we only want message types of text. So let's try to filter this down a bit. So what type of message should we get? Text. General points highlight. What else? Channel points sub only. But anyways, JLG, to answer that question, I've been using Effect for a really long time. I love Effect. I'm not the best at it, if I'm being 100% honest. I guess advanced. I think I can build the libraries. I've contributed to them forever, but I don't write the best Effect code. To be honest with you, I think Tim and Mike probably write the best Effect code. If I had to actually rank that. But I can build cool libraries, which is good. Message, schema that struct, and we just want the text, I think, here. Schema that string. Let's hear the rest of this. And the message type is the type of. You don't really need annotations, but I do this for myself mostly for documentation purposes. Description, be full text of the message. And now I can add this. Let's be alphabetical. I've done some RxJS in the past. I found it pleasant. I should give it a try shortly. Yeah, I mean, I think Effect is a lot of people like. I don't know why. I guess I do know why. It's because of pipe, but Effect is definitely not RxJS. It's I think that there are some like similarities, but Effect is definitely much different in scope and purpose than RxJS. And actually, Mike did a really nice write-up. I'll paste you the link on our documentation site about trying to debunk that myth. That being said, I think if you like the kind of functional programming approach, give it a breath to try, but it certainly does not impose. It doesn't. It like whenever I work with Effect, I've never felt like it imposed. Hang on, let me just attach property signifier type. I don't think it had like it imposes the idea of functional programming on you at all. And you see a lot of the code I'm writing is mixing like the pipe approach with a very imperative like generator based approach. I mean, if you've got experience with RxJS, definitely give Effect a try, but you'll find that they are quite different from one another, I think. All right, let's see what's coming in here now. Cool. We've got our correct type now that we've added our schema. There's nothing in here that requires. All right, here. I guess that's why we can't do it as a chat command. Actually, if anybody's ever done this. Redeem, Twitch, redeem channel reward from chat Maxwell. No, you cannot directly redeem Twitch channel rewards via chat commands or a macro. Come for effects, they really amazing. You guys can request whatever music you want. That's the whole point of this. Well, we are going to need this listener anyways, because we're going to need to listen for other commands. Grants, thank you. That type of thing. So because it doesn't look like channel rewards. Girl program that integrates challenge setups trigger. Yeah, I don't really want to go this crazy. Um, we are going to need this for when we start implementing macros for the chat. Okay. Let's go back here. And we can do Pounds Twitch client equals seal. Pull our Twitch client. We can grab our broadcaster ID from the same thing we're doing here. Do you feel Effect RPC is at a point where consumers can replace TRPC, spinning up a new project and evaluating what to use? I use Effect RPC for like literally every project I'm going to use an RPC thing for. I think it's fantastic. I mean, that being said, like if the package is not marked as stable, which basically nothing except for core effect is marked stable at the moment, like I can't advise you to adopt it wholesale. We're trying to keep, and RPC is on its third rewrite. Tim's done a fantastic job with this version. I think it is really, really good. But I use it for everything that I'm going to use an RPC framework for. I don't even reach for TRPC anymore. But again, it could have more API changes in the future. But I already think the API is at a fantastic place. I love using RPC, and so many things are built on it. Like the whole cluster and workflow solution that we have now is built on top of RPC. The fact that the transport layers are pluggable makes things super flexible. Our MCP server implementation is built entirely on top of Effect RPC's like primitives. The AI packages use a very similar technique to RPC. Say no more, I'm sold, not afraid of breaking changes. Any good examples to get started? Let me think about that for a minute. Mattia, do you know of any good RPC examples? Mattia, what was the question? Can reply later. Does snippets work in Neovim? Like if you start typing and choose effect diagnostics. Let me try. Yes, it does. Snippets do work, and your diagnostics ones do work. Respond to macro. Seth macro. Respond to chat macro. Punching. Which chat macros that respond to chat macro. Something. Yeah, let's give this a effect dot. Energy lives. Service. Interesting. What is this, Frankway? Thing. Who wrote this? This is cool. Brendan Brendanovich. Brendanovich. Well, if he's in the chat, this is very cool. This macrograph thing. Folks, I'm going to use the restroom really quick, and then we'll finish implementing this, and then we'll probably go raid somebody. Hi, I'm back, friends. All right, let's see if we can get some basic chat macro response thingies working. Let's see if we can get a test message working. Well, the event that's going to come in here is going to be a channel chat message event. And we're really only interested in text messages. If message done or event message type is text, and we can do stuff. Really simple, but EffectRx is going to be like, I think we'll put more time into it. I think we're going to put more time into EffectRx once 4.0 is out. What's up, David? No question is stupid. No question is stupid. I'm a firm believer in that. I think, personally, this is a personal opinion. I think any developer who makes you feel dumb for asking a question, probably not a very good engineer. Unless with the caveat that if the question is something that you could have easily like looked up, or if like you are asking a question without at least having like done some due diligence, that's a different scenario. But like if you're asking a question in good faith with, you've looked at the docs or you've looked at, you've searched around and I don't think there's any bad questions. There's no dumb questions. Effect has like a massive API surface. I even like confused about things frequently and have to message Tim. Like I'm like, Tim, how does X work? And he has to answer me. So, all the time. That doesn't matter. Doesn't matter, David. Like when you're new, you should be asking lots of questions. It literally doesn't matter. Friends, Carols, thank you very much for the follow. And Green 333221, apologize to see you before, but thank you very much for the follow. And David, thank you very much for the follow. It really means a lot, guys. I'm hoping that I can stream a little bit more to get more Effect content out there. I think the team and I are very interested in trying to get more like practical usage of Effect out there, showing like how we develop with Effect. Yeah, especially me, because I'm not like the greatest with Effect, but I'm a core contributor and I've developed it forever. So watching me struggle through some of the APIs is good because that feedback usually makes it back to the team. Friends, Carols, what is up? Are you part of the community? How on earth does the auth middleware work? Let's take a look together. Bunnings Lite. So, okay, MSMPS. I don't know how familiar you are with the Effect platform HTTP API builder APIs. It's kind of like a layer. So, to be clear, the RPC APIs are much further ahead than the HTTP APIs. Tim wants to take another pass at the HTTP API modules with all the learnings we've had from RPC. So a lot of the HTTP packages, there's definitely some work to be done on the APIs. But let me first provide you with this link. This link is to the platform README where it talks about the HTTP API. And in particular, I think what you're looking for is going to be if you search for HTTP middleware, HTTP API middleware. Oh my God, I can't spell it. There we go. So the HTTP API builder is basically, and this goes for RPC middleware as well. These APIs are a way for you to kind of like describe the interface for something, in this case, an RPC middleware. So let me actually make my screen bigger. How do I zoom in on? Oh, I make this. Oh. So in this case, this auth middleware is an RPC middleware. it's a tag, which means this is like a spec. This is a specification saying that this middleware is going to provide us with a current session. Federico, have a good one. It's going to provide us with a current session. It can fail with an unauthorized error. And to be honest with you, I'm not sure what required for client means. I'd have to go look. But these two, I think, are the more interesting pieces. The middleware, when we implement it, the result is it has to provide a current session, and it can fail with unauthorized, right? So this is a spec. That's why it's a tag here, because we can implement this multiple different ways, and then we provide it to our RPC somewhere. So if we go looking for where this is actually used, I bet in auth. Yes, so auth middleware here, because if we duplicate this and we go back to required for client means that the requirements of auth are necessary not only on the server side, but also on the client side. Thank you, Mattia. You say, like, constantly have to ask questions. It's part of it. The goal is to take this RPC middleware tag that we've like spec'd out, like this is what we expect to happen. And we can use this in other places where we're just dealing with the specification of the API. And then we implement it however we want. So here we are going to actually like implement this auth middleware. So we're creating a layer out of it. This is a tag. So just like any other tag in Effect, we can create a layer out of it. And a layer is just a constructor for some service. So here we're grabbing whatever this sessions dependency does. And then we're returning a function that can accept pieces of the request and allow us to do stuff. So in this case, we're extracting the session ID from the headers. And if there's no session ID, we're returning unauthorized, because if you recall, our spec here said that if we fail, it's got to be with an unauthorized error. We can't fail with anything else. So we return unauthorized here. And here we try to get the session ID from our sessions service. And if that fails, we also fail with unauthorized. So I'm assuming that sessions will return us a current session. And we can go look at that if we want to. Sessions. If we look at get session with location, yeah, we can look at all of this. Yeah, of course. I mean, the idea here is to abstract while we're just speccing out the API. And then when we get to like implement it, then we can be concrete. That's kind of like the idea. And that effect, that logic permeates through Effect. So you'll see, even like as I'm building services, I have no idea. Sometimes I know exactly what the service should look like upfront. Sometimes I don't. But being able to build in the abstract is really helpful, I think. Matt had a really nice quote on Twitter about Effects DI, about coding to an interface instead of an implementation. It's the same logic for that RPC middleware snippet you posted. All right, let's get this last piece of code finished. How do I do it? There we go. Sorry, I was on my browser on the other screen. Like, it was really... Okay. So maybe here we can do something interesting and create a matcher. Macro matcher. I'm not sure if this is going to work. I'm just going to go with it for a minute. So this is going to take in a string, I think. Match, for anybody who's unfamiliar with Match, it's a module in Effect that allows you to create like a matcher that you can execute on stuff. So it's like a generic way to match on things. Matt, you don't have to use this. We could easily just use a switch statement, but I just like exploring the APIs when I have a chance. So Match dot literal, match dot value, match dot match. Actually, let's do this. Let's match directly on the channel chat message event, and let's do a match dot when message is, I don't know, test. Because that's cycle dependent. I thought it was. Just have to keep defining the thing. Oh, let's actually do this. Handle child message. Which is just a string. Text. Let's just make it a string. And let's say when we have test command, tests, not text, we do a Twitch client dot chat message. This is a test. Match dot for else. Test dot void. Has void. Contemplation. Legend. Yield. Macro measure. Event dot message. Text. Cool. Let's just make sure we've got it. Sorry. Yeah. Oh, shoot. This is actually a really good example of an error that a lot of people run into that we're going to be smoothing out in 4.0. And so right now, when you create an effect service, it creates a layer for you. And right now I'm using the effect constructor here, but we could use sync, we could use succeed, you could use scoped, but I'm using effect, right? So this means that the constructor that I'm going to use for this service is an effect. It's an effectful constructor. It's a service that requires us to run some effectful logic to be constructed. And in this case, my service is returning nothing. I've got no methods on it. This is all the constructor logic here. I'm not actually returning anything. So when we look at the layer that's produced, Twitch chat macros.default. By the way, this is getting renamed to layer in 4.0, which I think is much more semantic. If we look at the layer that's produced, we produce an instance of Twitch chat macros, which in this case is returning an empty object. It does nothing. Can fail with a config error because we're accessing some config logic up here. We're yielding a config into the service, which means that the constructor can fail with a config error if that config is not available. And then we require a Twitch client because we're accessing it here. But if you'll notice, there's also a scope leaking into our requirements here. In 4.0, we're getting rid of the scoped variant of the constructor. LSP rule and Kelly, hold my beer. I don't know if that should be an LSP rule because there are valid reasons when you might want that. Actually, I can't even think of one. Okay, fine. LSP rule incoming. The scoped constructor will create a scoped layer for you, which means that the service, the scoped, like any resourceful of computations you do as part of the constructor for that service will be absorbed into the layer constructed. So like the layer will be the thing that manages the scope becomes the layer instead of you manually. So if we look at the layer that's produced now, there's actually no scope. And we can get rid of the Twitch client dependency by passing dependencies Twitch client.default. So now if we look at this, we've just got Node.js dependencies here, which are going to be provided at the root of our app. LL, generally speaking, I've never seen a layer of this yet. Me either, actually. So it might not be about LSP rule, but... So anyways, getting back to the discussion at hand, we are doing a resourceful thing as part of this service. We are forking a fiber into the background, and we're attaching the lifetime of that fiber to a scope, which means that if that scope is closed, that fiber will be interrupted. It's exactly what we're doing here with this listener. This listener is an effect that will be running in the background in a fiber whose scope is attached to the scope of this layer constructor. And the reason is because we've used fork scoped here. If we use fork, we are not attaching the lifetime of the fiber to a scope, or the lifetime of the fiber is just going to be managed by its parent. But in many cases, I think fork scoped is actually a better choice because it lets you be explicit about how the lifetime of that fiber is going to be managed. So anyways, because we're yielding this effect inside the service constructor, the service constructor now requires a scope. So we could fix that by changing effect, which we had before, to scoped here, and that removes the scope requirement and absorbs it into the layer constructor. Which means that basically the scope that we're going to give to that fiber is in most cases, going to be the lifetime of your app. Because usually, when you're constructing your layer graph at the root of your application, just like I'm doing here, and this layer graph is going to have a single scope associated with it. So the lifetime of services that get absorbed that are managed by the layer are going to be associated with the lifetime of your app. So if the app shuts down, that's when the scope gets closed and when those resources get cleaned up. So yeah, really useful pattern when you want to have background fibers that live for the lifetime of your app and get cleanly shut down when your app shuts down. All right, let's deploy this. And let's test out my test command. Seen fly take this long to get a depot builder in a while. Fly logged. And here we can see in my logs, I'm pull these over a little bit. When the server starts, immediately refresh the Spotify access token. I need to add similar logging to the Twitch access tokens, but we subscribed to that chat message thing here. So this debug message is saying, okay, this subscription now exists. We also have the other subscription we already had for channel rewards. Our server is now up. We successfully verify the webhook signature, so we know that now we can accept events. For both of these two requests are two separate listeners, two separate subscriptions. And it looks like Mattia's request did work now, which is great. And furthermore, so we've got macros wired up now too. So now we can implement whatever macros we want. Uh, that's pretty cool. Let's push this. And actually, before we do that, I do want to add these log lines to the page line. No, it's about I want these debug logs in my Twitch service as well. Here, we're going to refreshing Twitch user access token. And refreshing Twitch tab access token. Who knows about function? Cool. Let's take a look. Get command gem. Two. Oh, the crab rave. You know, I like the crab rib, so add setup for supporting chat macro command. Did push. Well, not flying no modules, fly deploy. Cool. Yeah, I'll try to. I'll update my bio and everything like that with and add some like default commands, like maybe today or I don't know if there are particular commands that I should have. But I feel like we're in a good spot with being able to add features to this thing. The two things that took the longest were definitely like authentication and authorization. I mean, that took forever to figure out, but I'm glad we got there. I feel like this is pretty clean right now. It's not too messy. Feel like we're in a good spot. Thank you very much, Mattia. You have a nice day as well. I hope all you folks have a nice day. And yeah, I'll see you folks the next time. Cheers, everyone.